Okay, great. So this is about our 5th or 6th virtual event series. It's called the Growth Leaders Circle, and it's basically where we try to bring leaders in multiple various spaces that we feel would be interesting and exciting to our audience, and allow them to teach, teach whatever they're kind of most excited about within their specialty, and for us to just have roving discussions. So today we're focusing on community, and we have 3 people who have basically built 3 of the most kind of thoughtful and active communities within technology products today. So I'll let them introduce themselves. First off, we have Stephnie Hughes.
Hello, hi, I'm Steph. Let's see. My community journey sort of started at Yelp. I was the first community manager back in the day when there was about 3 people and a lot of, signups, but there was no active community. So over the course of that year, I took it from basically crickets to 65,000 actives. And that was just a lot of small events, a lot of happy hours, a lot of work, a lot of 21/7. And then from there, I did a company down in South America that was sort of similar to Yelp. It was called Kikanto. And so that was like a whole different thing to build that out in a foreign country, which we can get into later if you have questions on that. But my last big community thing was really Tastemade. And that was a global food and travel network where we created food videos. It was kind of like video reviews of restaurants and food. And then now sort of working on my passion project, which is the FEMPS. And it's a underground lady gang of women for sort of professional hustle and actualizing passion projects. So been in community a long time. So yeah, it's a fun world. So, you guys.
Nish, you're muted.
Yeah, I think you're muted. I can't.
Sorry. And then we have, we're having a few technical difficulties here. And then we have Shana Summers, who can introduce herself as well.
Yeah, hi, I'm Shana. I am the head of community for the Her app. Her is the largest dating and community app for LGBTQ+ women, trans, and non-binary folks. We launched our community in May of 2018. And once we did a rebrand, and we've grown it since into a space where we initially started with about 8 community groups. Now I believe we have almost 30, and we're about to launch even more. And we also host in-person and online events. We've made the big shift during COVID-19 to do that, and we run regular events weekly, as well as recently launching a podcast as a new way to connect with our community as well, called Bad Queers. So that is kind of what I do.
It's an awesome podcast name.
Thank you. I'm very proud of it.
And last but not least, we have Nish Nadaraja.
We'll see. My big claim to fame is I hired Steph, so that's about it there at Yelp. But no, I was I think I was on the original founding team at Yelp, and that's how we met. So not only did I work on community, but I headed up our brand team, thinking about the actual nature of why Yelp mattered and how it was different than anything else that was coming out at the time. And so I was at Yelp for, back in the days before smartphones. So I left in 2010, which was, a career ago. And since then, I've been like an advisor and a consultant to a bunch of startups and bigger brands. But in terms of community, early days, I took a good look at places like Eventbrite and Pinterest. And since then, I've also, I look at community as something that's not necessarily just like a membership idea, but it kind of encompasses the entire brand. And hopefully I'll get to talk about that a little bit more as we go on.
Definitely. So we just had everyone just introduce themselves. And I think Nish kind of started off on this, talking about it, but one question I get a lot from marketers and different founders who are trying to figure out how to even approach community or how to think about it is, what do you even define as community within the confines of a technology product? Like, what is your original approach to even thinking about community? And when a founder or an exec asks you, like, how do we approach and think about community? What do you say? What what is your sort of definition?
Yeah, I'll take that first. If that's to continue there. So I'd like to point out that, with community, like it's got the same prefix as commonality and communication. And so, whether we're talking an analog idea or a digital one or some hybrid as they tend to be, that's community. So I think you have to first define it from like the brand or organizational level. And it's essentially that. It's finding, a place where people can talk about or share stories around something that has puts them in with a common root or common ground. And that's, I look at that first as like, saying like the brand comes first and then the community. So I think you kind of really have to establish what you stand for, what you're against, and then people, flock towards that. I know Steffi has some other thoughts around that if you want to jump in.
Oh yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I love the whole commonality and communication, because it really is like once you figure out what is it we're actually trying to do, and then really establishing, I think, those really early ground rules and finding those early members that are really going to kind of set the tone. But for me, yeah, community, it's just something, it's something that people can be a part of that's kind of bigger than themselves and gives them sort of a voice. And I think that's really an important thing. What else can I say? Sorry, I get nervous on these things. But yeah, I think it also just depends on what your brand is. I mean, some things, community maybe doesn't make total sense for it, but I think like in a case like the FEMS that I'm working on now, I mean, it's like-minded women trying to, get ahead in life and support each other and throw an arm down the ladder and really kind of help each other. So in that space, it's like-minded women kind of working towards a common goal. So. Shana?
Absolutely. Every part of community is bringing people together over a common interest. And whether that's finding you for a resource or finding you for the people that you have in your brand or platform, or being able to improve themselves, whether that's around a skill or something personable or anything like that, the community is providing something that they don't find elsewhere. And so you want to be able to drive people into that space to be able to grow. And once they're there and able to see that difference, so once you're finding your niche area, then you're able to figure out what they need in that space and grow it from there.
Nice. That makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I mean, all of you have worked on products. I think you had a really good point right there, Shana, that a community that draws someone in is maybe a location or a destination that they can't find elsewhere. And so they feel comfort in it. And that's what draws them and keeps them loyal to your community. So it makes a lot of sense. And then going back to just really starting off, like, and this question right here, the first one on our deck is sort of like, how do you first plant the seeds for growth of a community? What are some first 1 or 2 steps that you think someone should do to build a fervent community?
I would say some of the first steps is to find other, well, I was going to say like find other people, but you're going to find that niche group of people that will have instant feedback for what you're about to build. I think a lot of communities go out and they just start and they're like, hopefully people will like it. It'll be great. But you really want to be able to go into other spaces and talk to people who have shown that interest. Surveys are an amazing thing to do ahead of time. If you did have kind of a group of people and now you want to build out that community, go and talk to those people and reach out to them to say, what are you looking for and what are you after? Because starting the basis with having the voices of your community when launching your community is the best way to get that party started, basically.
Well, yeah. Go ahead, Steffi.
No, I was going to just jump in with Yelp. I mean, that was sort of really what we did. Is it was sort of, I was out there trying to find people that were excited about the mom and pop, that had that special place, that little hole in the wall that they wanted to share with the world, and finding people that just were genuinely so excited about their local landscape and just getting those people involved in it. And again, as Shana said, getting that early feedback, like, does this work? Does this not work? What can we do better? And really just jumping into the community as part of it. I think one of the keys to success with the CM is like, you can't just kind of be off hands and watch it happen. You really have to be in there and sort of doing the work and living it as well, which we did a lot at Yelp. And so, but Nish can speak more to that too.
No, I mean, I'm just going to echo what both of you guys were saying, is that it's a lot of it is about creating that early excitement, like, this phenomena or this movement, and getting people really excited about being part of something special. So it's not even it's the trick when Anish, when we're talking about growth, and I understand that's what we're, here for, but to me, sometimes I think of growth as like, it's got that not dirty feeling to it, but it's like a hack in a way. And community is a lot of authentic connections and one member at a time sort of ideas. And so I think I've always personally found it a challenge to try to, match growth and community together. I think that's like the holy grail. But I think in the early days, it is, finding, like Shana said it, and both Stephnie as well said it, like around this idea of finding these early people that are as passionate about that community as you are. Having the right community manager early on is sort of like the ideal model of how to grow the community. They are that person who knows the rules already, and so they lead by example. So I think the early days are about not necessarily finding 1,000 people, but about finding 10 to 20 people who really get it and really contribute a lot and participate a lot. And I think when people that are new to that community come, they get excited to see that and they want to be part of that too.
Makes a lot of sense. And obviously you and Stephnie grew what's probably known in a lot of the case studies and so forth as like one of the earliest kind of big community wins with like the Yelp Elite program, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And were there any major
What's that?
I think we lost him. Cut out.
Any can you guys hear me now?
Now
Yeah.
we can.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, any major learnings of things that you guys tried with like building that Yelp Elite community where you learned, oh wow, this was a bit of a misstep. This isn't something that our community really loved or has helped us like build. I think since everyone looks at Yelp Elite as that sort of like textbook example of how to do it right, I'd love to learn some of the mistakes you guys made along the way.
Yeah, I mean, Stephnie, do you want me to start here or?
Yeah, I'll jump in.
Okay. So early days when, I was there kind of creating the Yelp Elite idea, and, you have to take it back to what it means to the company, right? In the end of the day, we're, it's a community, but you're doing it for the purposes of a company. And so for us at Yelp, we're looking at a way to get people to get really excited. Like, how are we going to get people to write and contribute reviews and comment on them essentially for free, right? So I took that challenge, and some of our competitors in the early days were like, well, we could pay people to write reviews or give them Amazon gift cards or what have you. And it just didn't feel right to me. And we, brainstormed a lot around different sorts of things that could work. And community became this big, big idea where it was, let's give people this chance to contribute and, participate and talk about the great local places in their city. Make sure from a product standpoint that you had great, product or like the basic features of community that exist now, like messaging, friends, likes, all those were part of it. Everyone wanted to feel part of something from the dopamine sort of effect. But the Yelp Elite in specific was a way to kind of talk about how do we make sure that there was like this carrot. And we use the carrot in a way to say, if you play by these sorts of rules, there's going to be fun things that happen for you. And, it wasn't for everyone. It wasn't meant to be for everyone. But we wanted the people that really, really loved contributing on Yelp to get something special out of it. So, we kind of built it as like this fun, like members only sort of thing. It was not meant to be exclusive at all, but very inclusive. But it was meant to be something that you had to kind of work at to get. And if you played by the sort of rules we put out, you got to be part of it. And it felt really special. And it still feels special from what I understand for a lot of people to kind of just be part of something and be able to go out, not just digitally, but also into the real world. And obviously we're living in weird times now where we're not doing as much in the real world, but I think those basic premises still hold true.
Yeah, I think it's funny because, you hear that term experiential marketing and it's all about experiences. And I kind of feel like it's such a buzz thing now, but I mean, that's really what Yelp was. It was like, hey, did you know that there's this weird little German restaurant in, Silver Lake that has the best like sausage platters and beer? Like, let's all go there and like experience this together. And it was sort of, I guess that's a win for what we did. But the only negatives, I think is we really built the Yelp Elite up, and it sort of took on like a world of its own. Like you want to make your community feel really special. And so you're kind of working on ego, and you want to make them like, you guys are the fearless leaders of your community. And I've seen a little of that kind of backfire with Elite, where it's like they kind of just became food critics and kind of took over a little bit, which I think that would be maybe the only thing. Now being more active in the restaurant side of things, you know, it's like, ouch, like maybe we shouldn't have done that, or maybe been more firm on the rules there. But overall, I still consider going to Yelp and working there like, you know, the Harvard of startups. I mean, it really was like, we learned so much and did so many cool things that it was, yeah, I'm pretty proud of it still. So, yeah.
Yeah. I want to be cognizant, like I see a few other comments and questions coming in. If anyone wants to reach out that's listening in to me individually or Steffi, there's a bunch of other really cool articles about like how we started the early days of the Yelp Elite program. I know that there's so much more we're going to talk about, so I want to let Nish and Shana also jump in here too. But trust me, both Steffi and I can talk about the Yelp Elite for another 3 hours. So
yeah.
We'll, if you don't mind, we'll put your email addresses in the chat. So if someone has some quick questions, they can drop any of you three a note. Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we have time to get to them later, great. But I know there's a bunch of other fun things up ahead.
Yeah, most definitely. So Grace, we'll jump to the next slide. Okay, so when is the right time to invest in building your community? Should it be a priority for really early companies, or much larger, kind of heavily funded companies?
As long as your business is ready to commit to community is when it's right to launch a community. I think a lot of businesses think that it's a great idea, but they don't provide the sources or the resources and the tools needed to be able to make it the space that it can be. We are still a startup. I don't even know what stage we're in. Honestly, I don't pay attention to those things, but we still, when we launched it, it's like, I can actively admit, like, we were not prepared for community. And even now I'm still constantly, and this is kind of like the song of the community manager, is I'm still like daily fighting for resources. And it's a lot easier, I think, for bigger companies if they are open to committing to the community. So they have to be able to put those funds there. They have to be bought into it. The different teams from marketing to support to product need to be bought into what the community is, or else it's just going to be an uphill battle for your community manager. And while that's currently what goes on right now, I don't think that should be what happens in the future, because communities, especially now, it's like the buzzword of 2020 is building community when we can't be in person. And so if you're able to commit to it, I say it works great for any stage.
Okay. I definitely agree with Shana there. There's so many things we could talk about on that alone. I mean, it also comes back to how you define community. I mean, I sometimes think about it. Obviously, there's the member side of it that we're used to when we talk about something like Yelp or the FEMS. But I think, community can also be defined as like your best customers. Even anything on social media to me feels like it's part of community. Just going back to the idea of communication and always having interaction and engagement with people that are interested in what you're doing, that's community. So, not to turn the question on its head there, but I think you're doing it from the beginning. If you're caring about anyone who's interested in what you're working on from like that organization or brand level, you already have community. Like you could make the case that your employees are community, right? I mean, so I think it's from that sort of idea, you can, community managers have to rule the world, I guess is what I'm saying. But, I do think it is something that fundamentally it should be part of like the company level, not just as a side part. Early days after I left Yelp, I remember getting contacted by Clorox and they're like, we want to have community, and, I laughed at first, but I think I started to understand how you can kind of think about where it could fit in. I think you need a top level appreciation of it. Like Shana pointed out, like the resources committed to it if you're in a bigger company. But that's what I think. It's early days are the best days for it.
Yeah. I can't agree with Shana enough too. And just when you have the support of the company and the engineering team and building those tools. I mean, we had such a kick-ass like CRM at Yelp that, I mean, I love it. And every company I've gone to since then, we've kind of mirrored that same thing, because you need the tools to be able to really be a good community manager. You can have all the best intentions in the world, but if you don't have, the tools. And then I think also it's some things just don't need a community. I think it has become such a buzz thing that like a lot of companies are like, well, you need a community. And I consulted for quite a few, and it's like, I just don't think that that's actually what you're trying. That's not the win with this. You may want to like shift your focus into other things because, maybe Clorox, we could have created a great community niche, but there's just certain things where it's like, it's not needed, and maybe
Absolutely.
So.
That makes a ton of sense. Something like if you're selling like a consumer product, or like,
yeah,
if you're a t-shirt company, or if you're selling watches or something like that, like maybe community isn't necessarily at the forefront of what's needed. You're more or less branding a product and selling it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And I think both Nish and Shana got into that you need to resource your community properly. Nish talked about having good messaging, good tools, good chat tools, things for people to engage in. But for the people on here who have a budget and want to invest in community, would like to build a proper roadmap for how to properly invest in it. Shana, you mentioned that, there's sort of your wish list of things that would be in place to really properly facilitate your role better. I'd love to hear like the wish list of like, man, it would have been perfect if these things were in place from day one, or even right now.
Oh man, I could still send that whole wish list because I think half of it is still waiting to be fulfilled. But initially, it was definitely like I wish we had our moderator tools finished when we started. That was definitely like a work in progress for the first few months that I had to advocate for, and now I'm back for round 2. Now that we have a really thriving team of moderators. Clear spaces for communication. Even now, we still don't have a space where people can easily access our community guidelines, where we can easily highlight new members. I think you can see it in like Facebook groups. Sometimes they have a weekly thread of like, here are the new people that joined. I want that in our community so that these people can feel welcomed and be able to be in the space. We don't have, because we are in native in-app, and so we don't have specific push notifications that just go to community members. It goes to everyone. And so then that like decreases our pushability, which is unfortunate. But I got to drive people there somewhere, so I still do it until we can get it isolated. So I think mainly the areas where customers are able to come in and just successfully engage, where we can clearly put announcements as well as guidelines so that people can know how to behave and what to do when they come in, and then easy ways to draw in a space to make sure that it is welcoming for new people and that they know what to do when coming in. If they don't know what to do when they're coming into your community, they're just going to post whatever. But if there is a whole thread of people who have done it before, then they can feel better about entering that space. So that would be like top line for my list, because I could go on all day about what I would like.
Awesome. Yeah, interesting. You mentioned having moderators adds a lot of value. Is there an easy kind of measuring stick of like when you need to have moderators beyond that initial community manager? And does a moderator need to be employed by the actual product or company, or is it just a member of your active community base that you trust to come in and moderate for you?
Definitely the latter. There's
Okay.
whole discussions around what moderators could look like. If you're paying them, then they're on your support team. Like that's the one difference. But if you're going to go in and engage, I highly suggest, almost like how Yelp has their team, and so many other companies, use it as volunteers and provide them with perks that build them up personally, because you could go in and hand out a shirt or hand out swag or do anything like that. Those don't need to happen when you have people that are passionate about the space. And if you're able to provide opportunities for them to influence the pipeline, if you provide accessibility to different people in the community, if you provide opportunities for you to write about their skills for them to grow professionally, if you provide free trainings for them in spaces, because it could be a developer community and they want to go into this, you create like a VIP moderation platform for them. It's a very specific way that you want to work with moderators, but you want to have those committed people from the start so that they can guide people in what to do and how to engage so that you can have quality engagement inside of your community.
Okay, that's a great tip. So definitely the route of one of your current members, instead of someone paid to just be your moderator. So that's super helpful to know.
And it's eyes on the ground. I mean, I feel like, you can be a CM, you can be on there all the time, but like, the people, if you like with the FEMS, for example, we're a secret group on Facebook. So we are not privy to a lot of the tools that maybe a public facing group would have for monitoring, but we have these moderators that are on there around the clock. And it's like, if I'm working on something different, we do have eyes on the ground. It's really pretty crucial to keep the community in line. So, yeah.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, one person can't do everything.
Right.
And be there every single time someone has something that needs a response. Makes a lot of sense. Cool. Jump on the next slide. How do you prevent your community from becoming, quote, anonymous and losing the community feel as it grows very fast? How do you build that trust with the community in a meaningful way? I'd stick with the first question. So how do you prevent your, those are actually two completely different questions. How do you prevent your community from becoming anonymous as it grows really large?
Yeah, I'll take that just to start. I mean, there's a bunch of different tricks. I think it comes down obviously to the individual community, but you know, it's just, you know, from a product standpoint, you want to build in enough of like the notifications and ways for interaction to be there, so people feel like, you know, the CM alone can't just solve this, right? So I think, you know, when I've looked at the idea of, you know, not feeling like a new member there is, you know, having things like a welcoming committee, you know, that's again where you could have a gaggle of a handful of well-trusted members who get a list of new members and reaching out to them. So I've tried small things like that. I think it's one of these hard things where, you know, you want to make sure, even when you're sending out emails from the leadership, that they can reply back and it doesn't just feel like it's like an automated sort of idea. So this is only something when I'm seeing what I'm talking about. I think you're talking about communities that are, you know, 1,000 to 10,000 or more, right? Like obviously the best answer is you're individually going out there and talking to them. And I think, you know, we used to do that, you know, at Yelp, you know, when early days of, you know, like I said, Pinterest, where, you know, there's so few people that, you know, we were like, well, everyone should be talked to. And it felt amazing because those people wanted to participate and wanted to offer up more. So even when you grow, I think there's a chance to like let things splinter. Like at Yelp, you know, obviously because it was localized, you could break it up and say, well, there's San Francisco, there's Chicago, there's Tokyo, or what have you, right? And so those it was a chance to kind of splinter the groups up, and it wasn't like one big, large mass of people. So same thing on Pinterest, you know, you find these verticals of interest, and then you support them as such, not just on the platform itself, but on the interest. So I think there's ways, you know, you just have to look at it from each community and kind of think about what are unique ways you can make people feel more heard. I mean, that's the basic idea of community. No one wants to be lonely. Everyone wants to be liked and get likes. And I think that's, you know, so there's a series of mechanisms that are product based, and then there's the basic humanity, and it's hard to scale that, but I think it's worth doing it.
Makes sense. And does accomplishing that just naturally get harder though, as you're growing up to like hundreds of thousands or maybe even 1 million plus in your community?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think that's the nature. Like it's like trying to, you know, get Kim Kardashian to like one of your, you know, posts on her off of Instagram, right? It's an impossibility at some basic level to feel heard as you go up in that nature. I'm not speaking from experience here, of course, but I'm just saying, like that idea, it should seem like a challenge, and it should seem like it's hard. I wish there was like an easier answer there, but I do think that, you know, when you do get that, you know, like from someone who's, you know, in another sort of stratosphere in your community, that feels even more personal. So it's hard to kind of make that happen. It's more like a chance to, again, I think there's product features that I've seen that I've, you know, looked at Instagram a little bit more recently about like how they're trying to help their biggest like influencers or people with larger followings respond and feel like they're connecting back to the people that are just sort of starting out or are fans. So I think those things, again, those go a long way. It's like meeting your idols, right? Or, you know, going to a real life conference or talking to them on a panel that feels so much more personal than just like reading their work or something like that. So I think there are those ways to do that.
That's great.
Yeah, I think too, it's like, you know, I'm just looking at this, how do you build trust too? It's like just owning it. I think like if something happens at a community, something will blow up. Somebody will post something, the community gets in a total tizzy, right? And it's like, I think swooping in early and keeping communication clear and putting it out to the community, like, hey, we saw this, we hear you, we want, like, I think that's a really key thing to keep in mind.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And, when someone we're 34 minutes into this chat, it took a whole 34 minutes to get to a Kardashian. So that's a record. Usually a Kardashian comment's going to come a little bit earlier. So thanks for the restraint.
Keep that in mind for next time. Yeah.
But when someone who is a little bit of a bigger name within a community, like I'm sure you probably had a few in all the communities you worked across who were sort of like just generally a bigger name and had more following and whatnot. Do you feel like it's important for them to have to engage with all the questions and comments that come after their posts? That's actually a question I've had, whether it's important for them to engage in all the comments or all of that. Cause I definitely see both sides where celebrities might post, so they just don't really do anything in the comments, and others where they're really active in there. But then it gets them in trouble when someone's kind of, if you're big enough, you're gonna have a lot of the haters and trolls in there too. So like how do you think about that?
I think, they start from a place of genuine interest in reacting and interacting with their fans. I think, it's just like in real life, you see certain, I don't want to just think about just celebrities, but that just how human nature is. When you go up to people and you talk to them, you can tell like, these are human instincts around people. Some people are more ready to try to do it. I think at some level it becomes harder to do. Obviously, on a celebrity level, there's people that are even running some of these social accounts, right, or teams. So and they're kind of almost like taught how to respond with that personality. So I don't want to get into the fakeness of that side of things, but I think there is something to feeling heard. I mean, who doesn't want? I mean, that's how you make evangelists, right? Like my few interactions that I've personally had with when I've reached out to people within the communities that I'm a member of, and someone that I think is relatively more interesting or compelling or unreachable towards me, and they respond to me, wow, I'm more hooked than ever on that person, but also on the platform. So that's the basic idea there, and you want to kind of pay that forward. If you have that ability to influence someone else and respond to their question or like when they comment, what a great feeling that is. So we all know that. I think even celebrities get that idea. I think it's obviously just hard at some level just to keep up with it without having a semblance of a life outside of it. We used to joke at Yelp that sometimes we'd look at stickiness as a metric of how long people would stay on Yelp. And obviously it's a review site, but a lot of the fun of Yelp was for the core members, Yelp Elite and a few others, to participate on talk threads and compliment each other or message each other. And we'd have people that would spend like 6 out of 8 hours of a working day logged in and participating on Yelp, and we loved it. And I think that's something that felt really special. Obviously, the more important you get in your own life outside of that community, it just becomes harder to maintain.
Makes a lot of sense. Thanks for running through that with me.
Yeah.
Cool. Jump to the next one. I think Shana talked about this a bit about moderation. But do you think the necessity for moderation changes as a community becomes more mature? Like you absolutely, and at the early stage, maybe you can get away without moderation as much, or you really just need it at the very beginning. You need to have your foundational elements in place before a community is even going to properly grow.
I advocate for having moderation as soon as possible, because that is the main way, because if not, you're going to be the one trying to spend all of your time going and doing your day-to-day tasks and then trying to jump into the community and reviewing and approving and whatever else happens in your community. And it's not doable, especially because you want to go home and sleep at some point. And if you have moderators that are in different parts of the world and have different time frames, then it's covered, and that they have a space to communicate with you to do that. If I could have had a bigger team at the beginning, I probably would have, but I had a very consistent core group of people that had been a part of a previous moderation group that we started with, and then we pulled them into the new version that I started. And they were very committed. They were able to get more work done that I probably would have had if I had like double the amount of people, because they were just so bought in to what we were doing and our mission and what we were doing with the community as well. You can pull them in earlier and have them just start interacting and engaging with each other. So then that shows people what engagement in that community can look like. And they know kind of where to go, how to do things, who to ask questions to, because I can't answer everything, but they can because they have been trained to. So you want to be able to have those resources in there, especially when launching in a new space, because they can give you that instant feedback so that you can make those improvements and continue to like quickly change it or quickly adjust it if you need to, or make sure that like, hey, in this next month, we need to launch this because this is the one thing that was missing. And our moderators are seeing people post about it.
Okay. And from seeing Stephnie and Nish both nodding, I'm assuming you both agree that you need to start off very, very early, having that moderation level kind of figured out.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's like rules, you know, we see this happen with FEMS too. It's like, it's a weekend, we all went out, and then you come in, you've kind of let it lag for maybe even 8 hours, and you come back and it's just has exploded. And then people that are coming in for the first time are seeing this and like, oh, is this what this site is about? Oh, that's, you know, and so it's so critical to have that, you know, you want them to enter the room and be like, whoa, this is what it, okay, got it. And it's just, yeah, it's really crucial to have moderated, and just really, I think, hardcore rules with moderation, because the community needs structure, and they might, you know, lash out at a couple things like, I don't agree with this, but when they see that that's the structure and they know where to take it, it's just, yeah, it makes life a lot easier. So I'm 100% on board for mods early on. Yeah, crucial.
Okay.
Yep.
How do you propose you know, Stephnie was saying, like experiential events, you know, like how do you incorporate that into community building? I guess even more so now that we're doing most events virtual. Is that kind of magic still there? Are there fun ways you can get people more involved? What have you guys learned kind of in the last few months?
I can start. So, you know, even in the real world, I thought about this a lot. You know, I've probably worked on, you know, inclusive of Yelp, and then afterwards, you know, 300, 400 events, right? And everything from small 10-person events to 1,500-person events. And I've gone to a lot of events myself. I've been that member. I've been going to conferences, things like that. And what I've noticed is, of course, like if you're going to see like a great band or great speakers, or there's, you know, a cool venue or whatever, that's part of it. But in the end of the day, what's most compelling is that you meet 1 to 3 or 4 people and you stay in touch with them. So we really worked hard at that at Yelp, where, you know, there is the event itself, which is the during, but I really felt there was a big potential for the before of the event and the after of an event. And typically those weren't, you know, by definition happening at the actual space. So from a virtual perspective, like an event like this, we're having an event right now, you know, there's a chance to, you know, potentially see who else is going to attend this panel, or even getting to talk to my fellow panelists was exciting, right? And to connect with you guys. I think then all the wisdom we're sharing right now goes on, you know, for the next few minutes. But then afterwards, you know, all these people that, you know, could reach out if we had a chance to say, hey, this is who attended, you know, they're all probably like-minded people. We have a mini community happening right here on this panel, right? So I think I keep going back to this idea of, if there's a way to kind of get a sense of who's going to the event, the buzz before the event, then of course the event itself is going on. And then afterwards being like, wow, I really learned some really interesting things from what Steffi and Shana said, maybe Nish as well, but mostly Shana and Steph. But, you know, and that could take places like a tweet or, you know, a Facebook comment or something like that, but it's a chance to kind of connect with the people who also were part of this experience. So my big point there is, you know, even in the virtual world, you have a chance to connect with people before, and then listen during, but then after is this chance to really kind of play with it. It strikes me again, like I know that Steffi has talked about this a lot as well back at the Yelp events, where she would meet people herself as a community manager. And some of the people I remember her kind of bringing to events and things like that, have remained friends with her for years past her time at Yelp. So I think, again, it's the connections you can make.
Awesome. Thanks for that. And yeah, I guess we do have a bit of a community event right here going on right now. So tell me exactly what I do after this event. How do I engage our audience of, it looks like there's 39 participants, in the most authentic and meaningful way, in the I guess not in a non-gross way as well.
Right. Well, I mean, this is a permission marketing question too, right? So, in one sense, like if you, like I do this, I'll use Facebook as a weird example. Like, I still love Facebook for like the event side of things, where like I'd say, okay, all these people are going to this cool gallery event, and people get invited, and I'd look and see which of my friends at least have said that they're going. And I would write to them and say, hey, Anish, looks like I'm going to see you on Saturday. And you'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, oh yeah, you said you're going to this event. Oh, cool. Well, let's meet up before or something like that. So in that same sense, I think if you, for something like Ruckus, like if with permission from all the guests that are there and the panelists saying like, here's who's going, and you can see their faces pop up, whether that's LinkedIn profiles or what have you. And then, sharing that afterwards. Again, it could be as lowbrow as a spreadsheet. It could be within a platform itself, but a chance to say, all these people participated or said they were going to participate. And then kind of encouraging people, from a top level saying, hey, this is a great chance, take a look around, not just at the panelists, but also who else wanted to listen in on this. They're all probably people that are in the same boat as you, same challenges. And you know what? You're going to have a lot of, guess what, commonalities and things to communicate with them about. So I think that alone is, you've created like a small group, like you said, 39, 40 people here, where all these people, we all are talking about community and growth. We have something to talk about, right? And that's already the beginnings of something special. So that's the magic to me.
That's great. That's actually something we've not done. We've not taken our sort of like quote unquote audience or folks on our mailing list or anything like that and put them into like, let's say a Slack group or a Facebook group for immediate conversations, just only like asynchronous email or whatnot.
Yeah. And again, it's just like a checkbox saying permission on that, right? Obviously some people might want to just listen in, and that's fine too. But I would say probably almost everyone on here would love to meet each other. That's my guess.
Okay. Everyone who agrees with that statement, put that in the chat that you would like to meet people, or say I absolutely would not like to meet anyone here. This will be our little informal survey.
Yeah. There you go.
I'm actually really, oh wow, okay. Nobody yet has said I would not like to meet anyone at all. So I'm stoked about that. Cool. Let's jump to the next slide. Oh wow, most people said yes. Okay, or everyone thus far. All right, I guess we have to do something about that now. Is there a North Star metric that you guys kind of track when, I'm guessing maybe it's different from the very beginning of building a community, when maybe your North Star metric is maybe a little bit more like total membership. And then maybe like once it's large, you might look at something else like a little more loyalty oriented. But I'd be curious what your sort of like main one or two like kind of metrics are.
Yeah, so my metrics are based on the fact that we use the community to drive retention. So it all kind of is based off what you're using your community for. So there's this great acronym that I learned from CMX, which is called like SPACE. And so it's basically breaks down what your community is for. So is it for support, product, acquisition, content, or engagement? And so our community is based off of engagement, and our engagement drives retention of what our community is doing. And so we're looking at, like, I even have them like hanging out up here, but we're looking at like the number of active daily feed users and what percent of them are using it. What's the day one retention compared to the day 7 retention of people who come in and actually use the community? And then we then take it a step lower and look at the daily activity based off of that as well. So are people who actively post inside the community more likely to stay and retain longer? Are they more likely to engage in our other key core behaviors that then do also drive retention, or is it specific to them engaging within the community? And so that's kind of how we look at it. But if you're looking in a support community, you're seeing how many responses to a question are getting received and how accurate they are, and are people actually seeing it and things like that. So it all kind of depends on what your community focus is and what you're trying to get out of it.
That's fascinating. Particularly the first point and the first metric you're talking about, where just like what's important for the app is retaining people on there. And the answer might be no, because I can imagine it's very complex, but like, is there a way to match someone's retention in a community to their like their metrics of retention in a community to their metrics of retention overall on using, you know, the other side of the app, which is much more dating oriented, and, you know, seeing how long they've been on the app as a member of the dating side without dropping off? Or like, is there any parallel that you've been able to find between the two that's trackable?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been able to find that people who do come in, and whether it's lurking or being one of our top users, if they engage within the community, they are more likely to retain throughout all portions of the app. So if our community users, our community users who utilize the community side are higher, wow, words. It's a Tuesday. Our community users who engage in the community are more likely to engage in our core actions for the dating side. So they get higher swipes, which means they get more likes, which means they get more matches, which means they get more messages. And the messaging part is what keeps people inside of the app. And so we have seen from all different levels of what our community members do inside of the app, whether it's they just come in and look at content, or they are the ones posting the top content of the day, they are more likely to engage in those core actions and stick around longer, because that's kind of our main goal, is to make sure that those core actions are being used. But I think once we actually do invest in more community stuff and are able to get some more tools in there, that I think that will flip, and more people will just stick to kind of engaging in our community side, which is very exciting. But our dating definitely drives most of our retention. And so seeing that the community encourages those dating side behaviors is really awesome, and actually gives us that ROI for our community.
That's awesome that you're seeing the correlation directly, and it obviously validates the work that you're doing. And then, do a lot of people just take their dating hopes into the community section, are just like, what's up? Hey, anyone want to go out for drinks or something like that, instead of like using the swipes to get there?
All the time. All the time. Because we do have some communities that are strictly based on dating. Like we have a strong and single community. We have like a hit me up community, things like that. Or people who are like, come and find me in your area. But the nice thing is that say if you're not a premium user for our app and you're swiping on profiles, you'll hit a timer eventually that says like, okay, now you have to wait to come back, and it's either you update to premium or you go hang out in the community. So we're seeing a lot more people then just like go hang out in the community rather than just leave the app. And so it's a new space for them to be able to engage, but on a more global level. So lots of queer women are willing to hop on that flight and do that long distance relationship. So it's nice to see them jump over into the community and engage there as well.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. Because if someone, you know, generally when you're thinking about a freemium product, like let's say a lot of like digital apps or whatnot that have like 7-day free trial, like you're pretty much screwed after that first 7 days if you don't upgrade, right? Like you don't really get to do anything. So you're, instead of really aggressively forcing someone into that upgrade, you're saying, all right, stick around and get some value. Maybe you'll upgrade one day, or you'll just create a bigger community, and there's value for that for other people who are joining the app brand new and maybe will have a higher propensity to upgrade.
Yeah, I was like, the longer they stick around, the more likely they are to upgrade. Or it's more likely for them to engage in some of our events that we charge like a cover fee or anything like that for as well. So it's like different areas that we're able to kind of pull in, but also with our higher engagement, we do have ads and things in our community. So then if we're getting more eyes and more activity there, so then we don't have to sit and kind of throw premium at them all the time. It's like we have options now. So, and that's taken a while to build out, but it's really nice to be able to see the connections in areas where it's like, okay, we don't have to panic if somebody's not a premium member, because we have these other formats to be able to drive some monies. So yeah.
That's really great, because a lot of engagement focused apps and content focused apps, like a lot of people probably on this event right here who've worked in mobile app optimization, they're just so obsessed with that monetization kind of event, and hopefully trying to push people toward that 7-day monetization, 14-day monetization, which is a large event, right? It's not an ad. It's pay $20, pay $100, whatever that is. But you're sort of seeing the value of not of giving another option other than upgrading. So, and someone seeing actual value from it, which I think a lot of the apps right now can learn from, and giving someone a separate option to keep them sticking around. That's really great. Are there any other metrics, Stephnie or Nish, that you guys kind of were used to tracking to gauge community health, either at the beginning or towards the scale side?
Just keep it. I think Shana did a good job of covering a lot of things, even with her specifics, but I think they're generally all great. I think I try to avoid metrics in the early days. But to that point, instead of looking just at member, I think that the growth side of seeing new members was great, but absolutely the retention thing, the engagement and interaction, we tried to find and build out product features that led to more interaction and more stickiness. So we tried to push this idea of, you'd rather have 20 people super engaged than 100 people who just kind of came in and kind of checked in and checked out. So
Gotcha.
That idea for us was, if we could work with some magic if there was these 20 people that couldn't get enough of what we're doing, and how do we scale that out? So I think we always looked at the engagement more than just new members and things like that. So you can get someone to download something, right? But getting them to stick around is the real special idea.
Yeah, 100%. And also, again, I think this goes back to having the total buy-in. Is community important, and having a team that will help you build these tools and will really listen. So you're not just, beating your head against the wall. If only I could track the 7, 14, 21 day laps, I need those tools. So I think it's just really important to have that buy-in.
Yeah, that's great. I think a lot of your guys' community philosophy, Nish in particular, has been very wholesome. We don't buy users, we focus on the most engaged. So I think you guys approach it from a very wholesome standpoint of kind of trying to do it the right way and not be so transactional.
We've also seen it fail. I won't mention what the company was, but there was a company I worked for that was, let's just give out gift cards. And again, I'm sure we've all seen that. And it's you're not going to get a community that sticks with this. And we get 500 people a weekend, we give away the gift cards, and then they were gone. And it's that's not how it works. So I think you have to come from a really authentic, genuine place. And, you can just tell. You can tell which communities are really developed from just that true source, as opposed to,
gift cards.
I don't know.
No, I mean, it's really valuable advice. And if you do have to kind of drop down to the level of having to pay users to be a part of your community, is that then when you go and have a difficult conversation with the founder or exec and say are we even building shit that people even want if we have to pay people to sign up? Right. And have you been able to have those difficult conversations and maybe make changes to a product vision or anything like that, where it doesn't feel like a successful product if people are joining only if they get $15 free? Yeah.
Well, is this app going to make the world better? Is always the question I ask, especially when consult, is there actually a need for this? Otherwise, it's just, we're kind of shuffling people. I don't know. It feels like with FEMS, that's part of the reason why I think it took off from 5 people to now 22,000 globally without really any financial marketing, anything. It was just sort of we found this commonality and women wanted to support each other and help each other. And it's it just kind of grew from there. 5 people invited 5 more, then invited 5 more. And it just came from a very honest place. And, it's thriving. It's actually had the highest engagement rate of any community I've worked on, which is crazy because you're just wow, this is just people that really want to help each other. And it's cool to see, when it's real. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's jump on the next slide. Let's go to the next slide. What's the best way to get to know your community members? Let's say if your community was just built on an email list and there was 1,000+ members, Any advice on how to kind of, is it dropping them some one-to-one emails and being like, hey, let's get coffee, or let's do a virtual Zoom? Is it, you know, sending them surveys? Yeah, we'd love to learn thoughts on what works and what works the best.
You know, you answered the question in a way, Nish. It's a series of what you know. There's a book about this called Little Bets. It's you have to kind of try a few different things and see what works. You know, based on that community. I think back to the basics. It is one-on-one. I mean, whether you're talking about the question that came in was around like getting to know your community, but I think it also applies to the members themselves. You know, giving them this chance. I never would have been on Zoom, you know, 8 months ago, right? And all of a sudden you have a chance to say, let's have like, let's meet 10 members at once on Zoom or something like that, and just kind of go like around that. So I do think there is this need for human connection. The trick is that, you know, growth and scaling are harder to do this way. And I think at least from the foundational level, you really want to spend the time to, you know, whether it is writing back on emails or, you know, whether it's just quickly reaching out to a bunch of them through the platform or on Facebook or whatever it is, I think those are really valuable. And I think the beauty of community is that it comes with that sacrifice. It's not easy to do, right? These aren't things that just happen overnight. And just like with any relationship, you have to kind of nurture that and keep going with it. So
Okay.
Almost ending on that, it's not like there isn't an easy answer. I think it's a long road you take, and it's a worthwhile road if you believe in what the whole overall vision and mission is.
There's no hack.
No hack.
Used to say at Yelp, it's like throw it at the wall, see if it sticks, right? And it's like, you know, and even just commenting, I mean, you know, community CMs have their goals, right? You got to, you know, touch point of a certain amount of users. But I found even like commenting on people's reviews, it was like, hey, great review, gets nothing. Whereas, oh my God, you like pepperoni too? I love it. It's like that human element came into it. And that's when you get them like, oh, wow, someone hears me, someone's listening. So really, I think
I will say the whole, sorry, Stephanie, I didn't mean to cut you off, but like the whole Yelp Elite was a little bet. It was an experiment, right? I didn't overnight say, this is going to be what it is. We, you know, tried a few different things. And, you know, my original idea was like, I wanted to give people these cool t-shirts. I needed an event for them to go to, so I wouldn't have to mail them out. That's not exactly the entire story there, but part of it was like, I wanted to meet these people. We wanted to meet them. Our founders did too. And then it kind of grew from there. And then we kind of fine-tuned things. So, you know, the whole big thing that people talk about, Yelp Elite and community, was an experiment in itself. It was a little bet that paid off and became a bigger bet over time.
I mean, Yelp itself was just was a lucky accident too, right? I mean, I read the article that how I think it was Jeremy Stoppelman was the CEO, and like he built something completely else, right? And then there was like a little review section that on whatever he built, right? And no one was using whatever it was he built, but the little review section was getting all, I don't know if someone just made up this story for good press. So you can let us know whether it was just bullshit, because obviously you guys have heard a lot of bullshit stories for press, but
it was absolutely true. We could not figure it out. We were like, you know, the review element was definitely there from the beginning, but it was not nearly the front and center piece that it is. And you know, I remember the first few months, I mean, this was when Yelp was in an incubator, right? So we were working on it and we were trying to figure out what is that sweet spot of Yelp. And it turned out to be, like you said, it was like a little bit of a side feature. And we found out that the original idea was like ask a question, get an answer. And then we found out that people weren't just answering the question, but saying, well, here are 5 other places I also recommend for coffee, pizza, and plumbing, versus just answering the question on where's the best place to get coffee. And that was the idea, right? So true story.
You didn't just make it up for the press. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Because that is common. There's a lot of stories that were just made up for press, like Netflix starting just because Reed Hastings got like a 3-month, you know, what do you call it? Like he got a fee for not returning his like VHS or his DVD for 3 months. And he was so furious. That was all bullshit. That was made up by PR consultants. They were just business school students and they had a good idea. Like, I was just curious whether you guys did that as well. Cool. So we are at the 2 p.m. mark. I don't know if you guys have anywhere to go. I can field a question or two here. We can field a question or two from the comments. Or, I'm sorry, the chat. But we are at the limit, so I totally understand if you guys need to get going. But just let me know.
I unfortunately do have to run, but like I said, I would love to take any and all questions. You know, please bug me, find me somewhere. Nish and team, feel free to share that. And it was a real honor to be on the panel with you, Stephnie, and Shana. So thanks for that.
Your email is Nish is it?
Nish is it. Like Coke is it. So, all right.
Nice.
With that, I'll leave you guys.
Well, I sadly have to run too, but my email is Stephrences, like references, but Stephrences @gmail. So I'll type it in chat.
Please type it in. Cool. I think we'll just end this call then. And Shana, if you want to throw your email into the chat as well, if you're comfortable with that. Yeah, if anyone has specific community-oriented questions, these are the masters of the trade. Any feedback or comments for us on how we could have done this better, or anything you'd like to see in terms of an event, definitely drop us a note. And I appreciate everyone for showing up.
Yeah, thank you. This was fun.
Yeah, absolutely.